She arrived at the restaurant before sunrise, as she always did, tying her apron with slow, careful movements, while the city outside was still half asleep. The restaurant stood on a wide street lined with tall buildings and expensive cars, and it served people who rarely noticed those who served them. She had learned long ago to stay quiet, to move quickly, and to keep her eyes down, because that made the work easier and the days shorter. Her name was Anna, and she was known among the staff as someone dependable, someone who never complained and never arrived late. She took extra shifts when others refused, and she smiled even when her feet hurt and her back ached. She needed the money not for luxury but for survival, and for one quiet dream she carried deep inside her. Anna lived in a small rented room above an old shop, far from the bright lights of the restaurant district. The room had one window, one narrow bed, a small table, and a chair that wobbled if she leaned too hard. She kept the place clean, because order gave her peace at night. When the noise outside faded, she sat on the edge of the bed and imagined music filling the room. Music had been part of her life long before she became a waitress. Her father had been a piano tuner who worked in schools, halls, and private homes. He used to bring her along when she was little, and while he worked, she sat near the piano, watching his hands, listening to every sound. When no one was around, he allowed her to press the keys softly and taught her how different notes carried different feelings. When her father passed away suddenly, the world changed quickly. Bills piled up, and the piano lessons ended before they truly began. Anna was forced to grow up fast, leaving school early and taking whatever work she could find. The restaurant job came when she was barely old enough, and it stayed with her year after year. Despite everything, she never stopped loving music. She practiced in her mind, replaying melodies. She remembered inventing new ones, silently moving her fingers against the table. As if it were a keyboard, she believed that music lived inside her even without an instrument. That morning, the restaurant prepared for a private event, reserved for a powerful businessman known across the city for his wealth and influence. He owned companies, buildings, and entire blocks of property. People spoke his name with admiration or fear, depending on their position. He was visiting with guests and expected flawless service. The manager warned the staff to be perfect, reminding them that one mistake could cost them their jobs. Anna listened quietly, nodding. As she always did, she had served wealthy guests before, but something about this event felt heavier. The air was tense, as if everyone sensed that the man arriving later would change the atmosphere the moment he stepped inside. When the millionaire arrived, the room shifted, conversations softened, and backs straightened. He walked with confidence, wearing a tailored suit and a calm expression that suggested he was used to being obeyed. His eyes moved across the room, not with curiosity, but with judgment, as if he measured everything against his own standards. Anna served his table with steady hands, placing glasses and plates exactly where they belonged. She spoke only when necessary, keeping her voice polite and neutral. The man barely acknowledged her at first, but as the meal continued, he began to notice her presence in a way that made her uncomfortable. He asked questions not out of interest, but to test her. He commented on her accent, her uniform, and her silence. Each remark was wrapped in a smile that made others laugh nervously. Anna felt heat rise to her face, but she remained calm, responding respectfully and stepping away as soon as she could. At one point, the conversation turned to entertainment. The man mentioned that the hall next door held a piano imported from Europe, one of the finest instruments money could buy. He spoke proudly of it, saying music was a luxury meant for those who could appreciate it properly. Someone joked about talent and background, and the millionaire laughed, saying that real skill came from proper training and opportunity, not from random chance. His gaze drifted back to Anna, and he asked her suddenly if she knew anything about music. The question caught her off guard. She hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly, saying she loved music. His eyebrows lifted slightly, and a smirk appeared. He asked what kind of music a waitress could possibly love, and the table laughed again. Anna felt the familiar sting of being underestimated, but something inside her resisted shrinking this time. She said quietly that she loved piano music. The man leaned back, clearly amused, and asked if she could even play. She did not claim she could. She only said she had learned a little when she was young. That answer seemed to entertain him even more. He laughed loudly and said that was impossible without real lessons and proper instruments. He suggested that imagination did not create skill. The room grew quieter as people sensed where the conversation was going. Anna wished to step away, but the man gestured for her to stay, then with a tone that sounded playful but carried weight, he suggested she prove it. He said there was a piano right next door, and that it would be amusing to see what she could do. The words were framed as a challenge and a joke at the same time. Laughter followed, but some guests looked uneasy. Anna stood frozen for a moment. Her mind raced with fear and disbelief. She had never touched a real piano since childhood, and never in front of an audience like this. She knew that refusing might anger him, and agreeing might humiliate her. She thought of her father, of the quiet nights practicing in her head, of the years she survived being invisible. Something inside her hardened. She realized that whatever happened, this moment would matter. She nodded slowly and said she would try. The room reacted with surprise. Some laughed louder, others whispered. The millionaire stood clearly pleased, convinced that this would only confirm his beliefs. As Anna followed him toward the adjoining hall, her legs felt heavy, yet her heart felt strangely light. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew she could no longer hide the part of herself that loved music. The piano waited in the center of the room, polished and grand, reflecting the lights above it, looked intimidating and beautiful at the same time. Guests gathered around, expecting embarrassment, entertainment, or both. Anna stepped closer, breathing deeply. As memories flooded back, her fingers tingled, as if they remembered what to do even after all these years. She sat down slowly, aware of every eye watching her. The millionaire crossed his arms, confident that this would end exactly as he expected. He believed he was about to teach a lesson about knowing one's place. Anna placed her hands above the keys and closed her eyes, not to escape, but to listen inwardly. She remembered the sound of her father tuning strings and the warmth of his voice telling her to trust her ears. In that quiet moment before anything happened, the room held its breath, and nothing about the night would ever be the same again. Anna opened her eyes slowly and looked at the piano keys in front of her. The room felt larger than before, and every sound seemed distant. She could hear her own breathing and the faint rustle of clothing behind her, but nothing else mattered in that moment. Her hands hovered above the keys, uncertain. At first, she had not touched a real piano in many years, yet her fingers remembered the shape and spacing. As if no time had passed, she placed her hands down, gently feeling the smooth surface beneath her skin. The millionaire stood nearby, watching closely. His expression showed amusement mixed with impatience. He expected hesitation, mistakes, and embarrassment. He leaned slightly toward the guests beside him, as if preparing to enjoy the scene. Anna took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She did not look at anyone. She focused only on the piano, and the music she carried inside. Her shoulders relaxed, and her posture changed subtly, as if she had stepped into another part of herself. The first notes came softly, barely more than a whisper. The sound surprised a few people, because it was gentle and controlled, not random or clumsy. The room grew quieter, almost without anyone realizing it. Anna continued slowly, letting each note settle before moving to the next. She was not trying to impress, she was simply playing what felt true to her. The melody was simple at first, like a memory unfolding. As the music flowed, her confidence grew. Her hands moved more freely, and her body swayed slightly with the rhythm. She was no longer aware of the audience, only of the sound filling the room. Some guests exchanged glances, their smiles faded, replaced by curiosity and surprise. They had expected noise, not music, uncertainty, not control. The millionaire straightened slightly, his smirk faded. As he listened more closely, he did not understand music deeply, but he could recognize when something was not ordinary. Anna shifted into a more complex section of the piece. Her fingers moved faster now, with precision and grace, each note connected to the next, creating a story without words. The room felt different, as if the air itself had changed. The piano sound was rich and full, echoing gently against the walls and ceiling. People leaned forward, unconsciously drawn in. A server standing near the doorway forgot to move. A guest holding a glass froze mid-gesture. No one spoke, no one laughed. Anna played with emotion shaped by years of quiet struggle and silent practice. Every note carried something personal: sadness, hope, longing, and strength. She did not think about technique or rules, she trusted her instincts. The millionaire felt a strange discomfort. He had built his life on certainty and control, and this moment challenged both. He glanced around, noticing the expressions of the guests, and realizing that the focus had shifted away from him. Anna transitioned into a powerful passage. Her hands moved confidently across the keys, her face calm yet intense. The music grew fuller, brighter, and more commanding. A woman in the audience brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes filled with emotion, though she did not know why. The music reached something deep and personal inside her. The millionaire felt his chest tighten slightly. He crossed and uncrossed his arms, no longer relaxed. He had expected to be entertained, not affected. Anna closed her eyes again as she played, remembering nights alone, practicing in silence, remembering her father smiling beside a piano in a quiet room. Those memories guided her fingers now. The music softened briefly, then rose again with strength and clarity. Each shift felt intentional, as if she were speaking through sound. The audience was completely silent, now no whispers, no movement, only listening. The piano filled every corner of the hall. The millionaire felt a flicker of doubt for the first time. He questioned his earlier words and felt an unfamiliar sense of unease. Anna reached the final section of the piece. She slowed her pace, letting the melody breathe and settle. She allowed the music to fade naturally without rushing. The last note lingered in the air long after her fingers lifted from the keys. She remained still, hands resting gently, eyes closed. For a moment no one moved. The silence was heavy, not awkward, but full. Then someone exhaled softly, as if waking from a dream. Another person shifted their weight slowly. Anna opened her eyes and looked down at her hands. She felt drained yet calm, as if she had released something she had been carrying for years. She stood up slowly, unsure of what to expect. Her legs trembled slightly now that the music had stopped. The audience began to react quietly. At first, a few murmurs of disbelief passed through the room. Faces showed shock, admiration, and confusion. The millionaire remained silent. He looked at Anna not with amusement now, but with something closer to disbelief. He struggled to find words. Anna met his gaze briefly, then looked away. She did not feel proud or victorious, only honest and exposed. A guest finally spoke, saying they had never expected something like that. Others nodded in agreement. The millionaire cleared his throat and tried to speak, but paused. He felt the weight of the moment pressing against his certainty. Anna stepped back from the piano, unsure whether she should return to work or leave the room. No one stopped her yet. The manager stood frozen, uncertain how to respond to what had just happened. The room slowly filled with quiet conversation again, but the tone had changed completely. The laughter from earlier was gone, replaced by thoughtful silence. The millionaire watched Anna as she walked away. Her presence lingered, stronger than any comment he could make. Inside, Anna felt a mixture of relief, fear, and quiet strength. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew that something important had already changed. The music still echoed in her mind, and she realized that for the first time in years she had truly been heard. The silence that followed Anna's performance did not fade quickly, because it had weight and meaning. People felt unsure how to return to normal conversation after what they had just witnessed. Some avoided eye contact, while others stared openly at her, as if trying to understand who she really was. Anna walked back toward the service area with slow, measured steps. Her hands still felt warm and alive, and her heart beat steadily, now no longer racing. She expected someone to stop her or say something, but no one did. The hallway felt narrower than before, and the bright light seemed softer. Behind her, the millionaire remained standing near the piano. His guests waited for him to speak, because they were used to his opinions guiding the room. He looked around and sensed that the balance of power had shifted slightly, and that unsettled him. He had built his reputation on authority and confidence, and moments like this were not supposed to happen. He prided himself on being right, on understanding people, and predicting outcomes. Yet this young waitress had done something he had not anticipated. He excused himself from the group and took a few steps toward the hallway where Anna had disappeared. His guests watched silently, surprised by his movement. Some wondered if he would scold her further. Others sensed that something deeper was happening. Anna reached the service area and leaned briefly against the counter. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly. Her body felt tired, but her mind felt clear. For years, she had hidden a part of herself out of necessity, and now it had stepped into the light without permission. A fellow waitress approached her with wide eyes and whispered that everyone was talking about what she had done. Anna gave a small, tired smile and nodded. She did not feel like celebrating. She felt like she had crossed an invisible line and could not return to who she was before. The manager entered the service area looking confused and nervous. He asked Anna to wait and said the guest wanted to speak with her. His tone was cautious, as if he did not know whether this was good or bad news. Anna nodded and followed him back into the hall. Her posture was straight, though her hands were clasped together tightly. She prepared herself for anger or dismissal or worse. The millionaire stood alone near a tall window looking out at the city lights. When he turned to face her, his expression was serious, not mocking. The room felt quieter than before, even though guests continued to speak softly nearby. He studied her for a moment, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. He asked her where she had learned to play like that. His voice was calm but controlled. Anna answered honestly, saying she learned a little from her father long ago and practiced alone. Whenever she could, she did not exaggerate or defend herself. She spoke simply. The millionaire listened without interruption. His mind raced through assumptions he had held for years about opportunity and worth. He felt a subtle discomfort that he tried to hide. He asked why she had never pursued music seriously. His question sounded almost genuine. Anna explained that life had not given her that choice. She spoke of responsibilities, loss, and the need to survive. She did not speak with bitterness, only fact. As she spoke, the room around them seemed to fade slightly. Guests nearby sensed the importance of the exchange and gave them space. The millionaire felt something unfamiliar forming inside him. It was not admiration yet, and not guilt, but something close to respect. He realized that his earlier words had been careless and rooted in comfort rather than truth. He admitted that he had underestimated her. His voice was lower now, and less certain. The admission surprised even himself. Anna nodded quietly. She did not seek an apology or praise. She only wanted to be understood. He asked if she still worked at the restaurant by choice or necessity. Anna answered that it was both. She needed the job, and she was grateful for it, but it was not who she was inside. The millionaire looked thoughtful. He had spent his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, yet this young woman stood before him wanting nothing. He told her that the piano she had played was part of a private collection used for events and guests, but rarely touched with real feeling. He said her playing had given it purpose for the first time in a long while. Anna listened, unsure how to respond. He then surprised her by asking if she would be willing to play again at a future event, not as a joke and not as entertainment, but as a performer. Her heart skipped slightly, but she remained calm. She said she did not know, she had never considered something like that, and did not want to promise anything she could not give. The millionaire nodded, respecting her hesitation. He said he would not force her, and that the choice would be hers. People nearby began whispering more openly. Now sensing that something meaningful had occurred, the atmosphere felt different, warmer, less rigid. The manager watched nervously, unsure how this would affect the restaurant and its staff. The millionaire reassured him with a brief gesture. Anna felt the weight of attention pressing on her again. She asked if she could return to her duties. The millionaire agreed and stepped aside. As she walked away, conversations followed her like echoes. Some guests expressed admiration, others questioned their own assumptions. Back in the service area, Anna sat down for a moment. Her coworker brought her water and squeezed her shoulder gently. Anna smiled, faintly grateful for the small kindness. She reflected on what had happened and realized that while the music had ended, its impact had not. She felt exposed, but also lighter, as if a door had opened inside her. That night when her shift ended, she walked home under the city lights, feeling different. The streets looked the same, but she did not. She replayed the music in her mind and the way the room had listened. She thought about her father and wished he could have seen her. She imagined his quiet smile and felt a warmth that carried her forward. The following days brought change in subtle ways. Customers looked at her differently. Some asked about her playing, others simply smiled with new respect. The millionaire did not return immediately, but his presence lingered in the conversations of the staff and guests. Rumors spread and questions followed. Anna returned to her small room each night and practiced, as she always had, tapping melodies on the table and moving her fingers in the air. But now she did it with a sense of possibility she had never allowed herself before. She did not know where this path would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all, but she knew that something had shifted inside her, and that could not be undone. The world had heard her once, and she had heard herself clearly for the first time. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet belief began to grow that her story was far from over. The days after the event moved slowly, but they felt heavier than before because Anna was no longer invisible. People noticed her in ways she was not used to, and attention felt strange on her shoulders. Some guests returned, asking quietly if she was the girl who played the piano. Some smiled with admiration, others with curiosity. She answered politely and continued working, because routine still gave her comfort. Inside her, something had changed. She felt more aware of herself and of the space she occupied. Her movements were steadier and her voice stronger. Even when she spoke softly, she still carried plates and wiped tables, but she no longer felt small while doing it. One evening, the manager called her into his office. His expression was serious, but not unkind. He told her that the millionaire had contacted the restaurant again. He said the man wanted to meet with her, not publicly, and not at the restaurant. The request made Anna uneasy, but also curious. She thought carefully before agreeing. She did not want to be pulled into something she could not control, but she remembered the way the man had listened after her performance, and decided to trust her instincts. She said yes. The meeting took place a few days later in a quiet music hall owned by the businessman. It was a modest building compared to his other properties, but it carried a sense of history and care. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and old instruments. Anna arrived early, wearing simple clothes. She did not want to pretend to be someone else. She sat on a bench near the entrance and waited. The millionaire arrived without an audience, and without his usual confidence. He greeted her politely and offered tea. His tone was respectful and calm. He explained that after hearing her play, he had not been able to stop thinking about it. He admitted that it had unsettled him because it challenged beliefs he had held for most of his life. He said he wanted to understand talent better, not as a concept, but as a human experience. He asked if she would play again, not for guests, and not for judgment, but for herself. Anna hesitated only briefly, then agreed. She walked to the piano and sat down, feeling less fear than before. This time she played freely, without pressure. She explored melodies she had never played aloud before, letting emotion guide her fingers. The room listened quietly, and the man did not interrupt. When she finished, he thanked her sincerely. He did not praise excessively, and did not compare. He simply acknowledged the honesty of her music. He then spoke of opportunity, not as charity, but as responsibility. He said he had resources and connections that could help her learn properly if she wished. He emphasized that the decision would always remain hers. Anna listened carefully. She felt cautious because she had learned that help often came with conditions, but something about his tone felt different. It lacked control and expectation. She asked what he expected in return. He paused and said only commitment to herself and to the work. He said that talent without discipline could fade, and that discipline without passion could harden the soul. The words resonated with her. She realized that she had lived with passion for years, But without structure, she wondered what might happen if both existed together. She did not answer immediately. She asked for time to think. He agreed without pressure. That night, Anna returned home feeling restless. She paced her small room thinking of the risks and possibilities. She thought of her stable income and her fear of disappointment. She also thought of the piano and the way it had felt to play freely. She slept little but woke with clarity. She realized that fear had guided many of her choices, and that while it had protected her, it had also limited her. She decided that growth required uncertainty. She contacted the millionaire and accepted his offer under her own conditions. She would continue working part-time and begin lessons slowly. She would not abandon her life completely until she was sure. He respected her terms and arranged for her to study with a private teacher, a woman known for her skill and patience. The lessons began quietly without publicity. Anna approached learning with humility. She listened carefully, practiced daily, and asked questions. She struggled at times because formal technique was new to her, but her emotional understanding gave her strength. Her teacher noticed her deep connection to sound and encouraged her to trust it while refining her skill. The process was demanding but fulfilling. Weeks passed and Anna balanced work and study. Her days were long but meaningful. She felt tired yet alive. The millionaire checked in occasionally, never intruding, always supportive. He attended one lesson quietly and left without comment. Later, he sent a short message saying she was progressing honestly. Anna appreciated his distance. It allowed her to grow without feeling owned or watched. As her confidence increased, she began to see herself differently. She no longer defined herself only by her job or past. She began to imagine a future shaped by choice. One evening after a lesson, her teacher invited her to play in a small recital for students. Anna felt nervous, but agreed. She remembered the first time she had played publicly and trusted herself again. The recital was modest with only a few listeners, but the experience felt significant. Anna played with sincerity and focus and received warm applause. She felt proud not because of recognition, but because she had chosen to step forward. The millionaire attended quietly, sitting in the back. He left early, but later sent a message congratulating her on her courage. Anna returned home that night feeling grounded. She realized that success did not have to be loud to be real. Her coworkers noticed her lighter spirit and supported her. Some asked about her lessons, others simply encouraged her. She continued to serve tables and clean counters, but she no longer felt trapped. She felt like she was building something slowly, honestly. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but she was no longer afraid of uncertainty. She had learned that dignity did not come from wealth or approval, but from honoring one's truth. And with every key she pressed, she felt closer to the life she had once only imagined quietly in the dark. Anna's life continued to change in ways she had never planned, yet each change felt earned rather than given. Her days followed a careful rhythm. Now work, lessons, practice, rest. She woke early, served guests with the same care as before, then traveled across the city to the quiet music hall where she studied. She returned home late, tired but fulfilled. The piano lessons grew more demanding. Her teacher no longer focused only on basic technique, but pushed her to understand structure, timing, and discipline. Anna welcomed the challenge. She learned that emotion alone was not enough, and that control allowed emotion to speak more clearly. There were days when frustration crept in. Her fingers felt stiff, her progress slow, and her confidence fragile. On those days, she reminded herself why she began. She remembered the moment she first touched the piano at the restaurant, and the silence that followed her final note. That memory steadied her. The millionaire remained mostly in the background, yet his presence shaped opportunities quietly. He funded the lessons, arranged access to practice spaces, and connected her teacher with other musicians. He did not interfere or demand progress reports. He allowed Anna to grow at her own pace. This distance helped her trust the support. She did not feel like a project or an experiment. She felt like a person being respected. One afternoon, her teacher introduced her to a small group of local musicians who met weekly to share music and ideas. Anna felt nervous entering the room because she was older than some beginners and less trained than others, but she listened carefully and learned quickly. When it was her turn to play, she chose a simple piece. She focused on honesty rather than perfection. The group listened quietly and responded with encouragement and thoughtful feedback. Anna realized she was no longer alone in her journey. These gatherings became an important part of her growth. She learned to accept critique without shrinking and praise without guilt. She began to see music as a conversation rather than a performance. At the restaurant, changes continued as well. Management treated her with more consideration. Guests recognized her, and some asked about her music. Others requested she play again, but she declined politely. She wanted to protect the meaning of that first moment. One evening, a young server asked her why she kept working so hard when she had other options. Anna thought for a moment and said that work reminded her of who she was and where she came from. She did not want to forget that. Financial stability remained important. She still needed her income, and she valued independence. She refused offers that felt rushed or controlling. The millionaire noticed her boundaries and respected them more deeply. This increased his admiration. He began to question how many people in his life had ever spoken to him so honestly. Over time, their conversations grew more thoughtful. They discussed art, effort, and responsibility. He listened more than he spoke, which was new for him. Anna never asked him to change, but her presence influenced him nonetheless. He began supporting music programs for children in underfunded neighborhoods quietly without announcements. He did not credit Anna publicly, but he knew why he did it. Anna continued progressing. Her teacher encouraged her to explore composition. She hesitated at first, unsure if she had the right to create rather than interpret. But when she tried, she felt something unlock. She began writing simple melodies inspired by Memory Street's voices, loss and hope. The pieces were not complex, but they were sincere. Her teacher praised their emotional clarity. Anna practiced late into the night, sometimes forgetting to eat. She learned to balance passion with care for herself, remembering the exhaustion that once ruled her life. One night while practicing alone, she paused and felt overwhelmed by gratitude and fear. Gratitude for the chance she had been given and fear of losing it. She sat quietly, letting both feelings exist without judgment. The next day, her teacher suggested she apply to a local conservatory program designed for non-traditional students. Anna laughed at first, thinking it impossible, but the idea stayed with her. She reviewed the requirements and doubted herself again. She lacked formal education and credentials, yet she had something else: experience, resilience, and authenticity. She shared her doubts with the millionaire, expecting encouragement or dismissal. Instead, he said that doubt meant she cared, and that care was valuable. He said the decision must be hers alone. Anna spent days thinking carefully. She imagined failure and rejection. She also imagined growth and possibility. Finally, she decided that avoiding fear was no longer acceptable. She prepared her application slowly, thoughtfully. She recorded a performance and wrote about her journey honestly without embellishment. She did not hide her background or her age. When she submitted the application, she felt relief rather than anxiety. Whatever happened, she had honored herself. Weeks passed without response. Life continued with lessons, work, and practice. She learned patience and presence. During this time, the restaurant hosted another private event. Anna worked quietly, blending into the background. She noticed the piano across the room and smiled softly, but did not approach it. The millionaire attended the event and watched her from a distance. He noticed her calm focus and how she moved with quiet confidence. He realized she no longer needed him to believe in her. When the acceptance letter arrived, Anna read it slowly twice to be sure. She was invited to join the program on a trial basis. Her hands shook as she sat down, processing the words. She did not shout or cry. She simply sat still, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her body. That night she walked through the city under familiar lights, feeling grounded and grateful. She thought of her father and whispered thanks into the night. Her journey was far from finished, and challenges awaited her, but she had crossed a threshold from survival to purpose. She understood now that talent was not a gift given to a chosen few, but a responsibility carried by those willing to listen, work, and persist. And as she prepared for the next chapter, she carried with her not bitterness or pride, but quiet strength and humility built through honest effort. Anna entered the conservatory building for the first time with a quiet sense of disbelief. The walls were plain, and the halls echoed softly with footsteps and distant music. She carried her bag close to her body and moved slowly, taking in every detail. This place was not grand or intimidating, but it held years of effort and discipline within its walls. She was older than most of the students and aware of it. She noticed the confident posture of those who had trained since childhood and the ease with which they spoke about composers and techniques. She listened more than she spoke and reminded herself that she belonged there because she had earned the chance. The first weeks were overwhelming. Classes moved quickly, and expectations were high. Anna struggled to keep up with written theory because her education had been interrupted long ago. She spent long nights studying concepts that others seemed to understand instinctively. There were moments when doubt returned quietly. She questioned whether passion could truly compete with years of formal training. Yet each time she sat at the piano, she remembered why she was there. The instrument did not judge her past or her age. It responded only to honesty and effort. Her instructors noticed her dedication. Even when her technique lagged, they commented on her emotional awareness and her ability to communicate feeling through sound. One teacher told her that skills could be taught, but sincerity could not. Anna practiced relentlessly, but she also learned to rest. She remembered the cost of exhaustion and learned to listen to her body as well as the music. This balance allowed her growth to continue without burning her spirit. The millionaire remained a distant presence, now offering support only when asked. He attended one student performance quietly and left without drawing attention. Anna saw him briefly and nodded in acknowledgement. Nothing more was needed. As months passed, Anna formed quiet friendships with a few students who admired her persistence. They studied together, shared stories, and encouraged one another. She learned that struggle created bonds stronger than competition. One evening after a long rehearsal, Anna sat alone in a practice room and felt a wave of emotion. She realized that she was no longer chasing a dream, she was living within it even when it was difficult. She wrote music more often now, using her experiences as inspiration. Her compositions became more confident, reflecting not just emotion, but structure and intention. Her teacher encouraged her to submit one piece for a small internal showcase. Anna hesitated, fearing judgment, but agreed. She performed her composition with calm focus. The response was warm and respectful. Some listeners approached her afterward, asking about the story behind the music. She answered, simply saying it was about finding a voice after years of silence. That night she walked home slowly, feeling a quiet pride. She knew she still had much to learn, but she no longer questioned her right to learn it. The restaurant reduced her hours, allowing her to focus on study. Her co-workers celebrated her progress and supported her without envy. They saw her success as shared proof that effort mattered. The journey ahead remained demanding, but Anna felt steady. She had learned that dignity came not from approval but from perseverance. And with each passing day, she moved further from the life that once limited her and closer to the one she had chosen with courage and patience. The final year of the program arrived quietly, without ceremony, but Anna felt its weight from the first day. She had changed since walking into the conservatory for the first time, yet the pressure was greater now. Because expectations were real and visible, she was no longer the unusual older student finding her footing. She was someone others watched with interest. Her days became fuller and more focused. Morning classes, rehearsals, individual practice, composition sessions, and part-time work filled her schedule. There was little wasted time, and she learned to value every hour. She moved through the city with purpose, no longer rushing, no longer hiding. Her instructors pushed her harder now. They expected refinement, discipline, and consistency. They challenged her interpretations and questioned her choices, forcing her to explain not only what she played, but why she played it. Anna welcomed this. She had spent much of her life being silent, and now she learned how to speak clearly through music and words. One instructor in particular encouraged her to prepare for a public recital sponsored by the conservatory. It would be attended by patrons, donors, and members of the local arts community. The opportunity was significant, and so was the pressure. Anna felt fear again, but it was different now. It did not paralyze her, it sharpened her focus. She agreed to participate, knowing that this would test everything she had learned. Preparation consumed her. She practiced daily, refining not only technique, but emotional pacing. She learned when to hold back and when to release. She listened to recordings not to imitate, but to understand structure. She chose to perform a piece she had composed herself, expanded and refined with guidance from her teachers. The decision was risky. Original work invited deeper judgment, but she knew that honesty had carried her this far, and she refused to abandon it now. As the recital approached, doubt visited her, often late at night. She questioned whether her work was strong enough, whether her past would always mark her as different. She allowed the doubts to pass without chasing them. The millionaire reached out once during this time. He wished her well and said he planned to attend quietly if she was comfortable. She appreciated the message and agreed without expectation. On the evening of the recital, the hall filled slowly with people dressed formally and speaking softly. Anna waited backstage, breathing steadily. She touched the piano briefly before stepping away, grounding herself in its presence. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage with calm confidence. The lights were bright, but not blinding. The piano waited center stage, familiar and steady. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. She paused briefly, not in fear, but in acknowledgement of the moment. The music began softly, building with intention. Her composition carried echoes of her journey, struggle, patience, loss, and resilience. The audience listened closely, drawn into the narrative without knowing its full history. Her hands moved with certainty, shaped by discipline and guided by feeling. She did not rush. She allowed the music to unfold naturally. As the piece reached its central passage, she felt fully present, grounded and free. She no longer thought about judgment or outcome. She trusted the work. The final notes faded gently, and she lifted her hands calmly. Silence followed, heavy and full. Then applause rose, sincere and sustained. Anna stood and bowed, feeling gratitude rather than relief. She spotted the millionaire seated near the back. His expression was thoughtful and proud, but not possessive. He clapped respectfully like everyone else. After the recital, several people approached her, offering congratulations and opportunities. Some spoke of future performances, collaborations, and teaching roles. Anna listened carefully, grateful, but cautious. She had learned the value of choice. Later that night, she walked home alone, letting the city sounds settle around her. She felt complete, not finished, but whole. She thought of the young waitress she once was, and felt compassion, not distance. She honored that version of herself for surviving long enough to grow. The journey had reshaped her not into someone new, but into someone revealed. And as she prepared for what came next, she knew that success for her would never be measured by wealth or applause, but by integrity, growth, and the courage to remain true to herself. The story that began with ridicule had transformed into one of respect, not only from others, but from within. And that respect became the foundation for everything still to come. Anna woke on the morning, after the recital, with a calm she had never known before. The city outside her window moved, as it always had, yet she felt separate from its urgency. She did not feel rushed or anxious, she felt present. The conservatory program ended quietly weeks later. Without grand celebration, certificates were handed out, hands were shaken, and people spoke of future plans. Anna accepted congratulations with grace, but did not cling to the moment. She understood that endings were also beginnings. Opportunities followed, but she chose carefully. She declined offers that felt hurried or shaped by ego. She accepted those that aligned with her values, teaching small groups, performing in intimate spaces, and continuing to compose music that reflected real lives. She reduced her hours at the restaurant gradually, until one day she no longer needed the job. Saying goodbye was emotional. The place had been both a burden and a shelter. Her coworkers hugged her with pride, knowing they had witnessed something rare. She moved into a modest apartment closer to the music hall. It was not luxurious, but it felt earned. She placed a small piano near the window and practiced every morning as sunlight filled the room. The millionaire attended one of her early public performances, but stayed anonymous afterward. He no longer saw himself as a guide or benefactor. He saw himself as a witness to what humility and courage could create. Their connection softened into mutual respect. Without obligation, they spoke, occasionally sharing thoughts about art, responsibility, and growth. He listened more than he spoke, and learned more than he expected. Anna began mentoring young students from neighborhoods like her own. She recognized their uncertainty and quiet hope. She taught them not only technique, but patience and self-trust. She told them that their voices mattered even when the world seemed loud. Her music evolved, becoming richer, more layered, yet still honest. She performed in community halls, schools, and small theaters. Each audience felt meaningful, because she remembered when no one had listened. One evening after a performance, a young girl approached her shyly and said she wanted to play piano but thought she did not belong. Anna knelt beside her and smiled. Gently, she said, belonging was something you claim, not something you wait to be given. As years passed, Anna never forgot where her journey began. She kept a simple routine, staying grounded in work and gratitude. Fame never tempted her because she knew its cost. Her story spread quietly, not through headlines, but through people whose lives she touched. The meaning lived in changed minds and opened doors. On quiet nights, she sometimes thought of her father and the first piano she ever touched. She felt his presence in every note she played. She understood now that talent was not a miracle. It was a relationship between effort, memory, and courage. The moment she had been ridiculed no longer hurt. It had become part of the path that led her home to herself. And in that understanding, she found peace, knowing that no matter where life carried her next, she would always walk forward with dignity, honesty, and unwavering belief in her own voice.